Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Chanavallabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Chanavallabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Shri Radha Madhava Rasta Sakirana Ki Jai Shri Radha Muralidhar Gaur Chandra Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Good morning, everyone. I know it's been said, but we'll say it again. Good morning and Hare Krishna. Very grateful to try to be with you here today. Try because I didn't get much sleep last night. So I am attempting to be here with you instead of to Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Dayam Mudire Nashtapraishva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashake Bhakti Naishtaki. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 3rd chapter, text 14, about the divine appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Sa eva sva prakrityedam Srishtva Gretri Gunatmakam Tad Anutvam Hya Pravishtaha Pravishta Iva Bhavyase. Synonyms. Sa, he, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eva, indeed. Svaprakritya, by your personal energy. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Idam, this material world. Shishtva, after creating. I'll just go back actually. It's interesting here. Svaprakritya, Krishna. Prakrita is Krishna's material energy, but Krishna, or Srila Prabhupada is, it's interesting that here he's adding that it's Krishna's personal energy, not that it's just the material energy, but he's identifying that material energy as belonging to Krishna. Here, I find that interesting. We'll continue on. Shishtva, after creating. Agre, in the beginning. Triguna Atmakam, made of 3 modes of energy. Sattva, Rajas, Tama, Guna. Tat Anu, thereafter. Tvam, your lordship. He, indeed. Apravishta, although you did not enter. Pravishta Eva, you appear to have entered. Bhavyase, are so understood. Translations and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My Lord, you are the same person who in the beginning created this material world by His personal external energy. After the creation of this world of 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, you appear to have entered it, although in fact you have not. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 7.4, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains, Bhumir apo nalo vayu kamano buddhir evacha ahankara itihame bhina prakritir ashtada. This material world of 3 modes of nature, sattva guna, rajaguna, and tamaguna, is a composition of earth, water, fire, air, mind, intelligence, and false ego, all of which are energies coming from Krishna. Yet Krishna, being always transcendental, is aloof from this material world. Those who are not in pure knowledge think that Krishna is a product of matter and that his body is material like ours. Avajananti mam mudha. In fact, however, Krishna is always aloof from this material world. In the Vedic literature, we find the creation described in relationship to Mahavishnu, as stated in the Brahma Samhita 5:35. Eko pyasara chaitum jagaranda kotim yachchaktir asti jagaranda chayayarantaha andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, the original personality of Godhead. By his partial plenary expansion as Mahavishnu, he enters into the material nature. Then he enters every universe as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and he enters all the elements, including every atom of matter, as Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. Such manifestations of cosmic creation are innumerable, both in the universes and in the individual atoms. Govinda is partially exhibited as Antaryami, the supersoul who enters this material world, Andantarasta, and who is also within the atom. The Brahma Samhita 548 further says, Yasyaikan Nishvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagarandaranataha Vishnur Mahan Sahyayasya Kala Vishesho Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. This verse describes Mahavishnu as a planetary expansion of Krishna. Mahavishnu lies on the causal ocean, and when he exhales, millions of Brahmandas or universes come from the pores of his body. Then when Mahavishnu inhales, all these Brahmandas disappear. Thus the millions of Brahmandas controlled by the Brahmas and other demigods come and go in this material world through the breathing of Mahavishnu. Foolish persons think that when Krishna appears as the son of Vasudev, he is limited like an ordinary child. But Vasudev was aware that although the Lord had appeared as his son, the Lord had not entered Devaki's womb and then come out. Rather, the Lord was always there. The Supreme Lord is all-pervading, present within and without. Pravishta Eva Bhavyase. He only seemed to have entered the womb of Devaki and to have now appeared as Vasudev's child. The expression of this knowledge by Vasudev indicates that Vasudev knew how these events took place. Vasudev was certainly a devotee of the Lord in full knowledge, and we must learn from devotees like him. Bhagavad Gita 4:34 therefore recommends Tadvidhi Upadakshanti Te Jnanam Jnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Vasudev begot the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet he was in full knowledge of how the Supreme Lord appears and disappears. He was therefore Tattvadarshi, a seer of the truth, because he personally saw how the Supreme Absolute Truth appeared as his son. Vasudev was not in ignorance, thinking that because the Supreme Godhead had appeared as his son, the Lord had become limited. The Lord is unlimitedly existing and all-pervading, inside and out. Thus, there is no question of his appearance or disappearance. Om Akyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dudati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Svapana Raghunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parishana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahakana Lalita Shri Vishwakanditam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwapana Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatu Vyascha Kripasinubhye Vachapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So again, so nice to be with all of you this morning. I seek the blessings of our senior devotees here, Adi Purusha Prabhu. And I don't know if Arjuna Prabhu appears as though he is also blessing us with his presence and his listening. So how wonderful it is to be able to hear about and glorify Krishna this morning. There are many people scurrying about this world, busy trying to maintain themselves, trying to earn a living, trying to make ends meet, and trying to enjoy in this material world, forgetting that Krishna is their maintainer, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and not getting the great opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're very fortunate that we get this opportunity by the grace of our previous acharyas and our spiritual masters. So again, I will read this verse if I can pull it up. Vasudev is offering prayers to Krishna. He says, "My Lord, you are the same person who in the beginning created this material world by his personal external energy. After the creation of this world of three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, you appear to have entered it, although in fact you have not." So I'm a personal fan of all of these paradoxes that you find in the Shastra. They make life so interesting. I remember in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, they made me simultaneously excited and frustrated. And as Krishna explains in the Gita, that one can understand the truth only by devotional service and by the mercy of the previous acharyas. As Prabhupada even mentioned that verse Tadvidhi Pranipatena in the purport here, that one can understand the truth by approaching a bona fide spiritual master. And how wonderful it is that we can begin to understand the inconceivable by the mercy of our wonderful previous acharyas. And so here there's the main analogy that's shared in this verse is how Krishna appears to have entered this material world, although it's saying in fact he has not. There's many other and then there's a more subtle seeming contradiction here, where it says that he in the beginning created this material world. But the question is which beginning? And is there actually a beginning? Because as explained in the purport and in the Brahma Samhita, Mahavishnu lays down and simply exhales effortlessly. And so many universes emanate from each of the pores of his body. And then again, he inhales effortlessly, and all of the universes enter back into his body while he's just chilling, right? He's not putting in so much effort. Here, people are scurrying around, trying so hard just to pay their expensive New York rent, just to get squeeze a little sense enjoyment out of this material world. And Mahavishnu is creating all of the universes without even trying. It's just breathing. Usually we don't have to try to breathe, which is a gift from Krishna. How kind is he that we don't have to try to breathe most of the time unless we're drowning, which we are in this material world, but that's another story. And yet, Krishna, when he breathes, obviously his breathing is effortless, and all these material worlds are creating. So then the question is it's saying that at the beginning, Krishna creates this material world of the three modes of material nature. But again, the question is which beginning, and is there even a beginning? Because Krishna is eternal, and we're his eternal parts and parcels. So we've actually been existing eternally. Krishna's been existing eternally, and yet he's considered to be the beginning because he is the origin. He's the origin of everything, and yet there's actually no real beginning to our eternality, because for things to be eternal, there would have to be no beginning. But he's talking about specifically the beginnings of, there's no beginning, and yet there's unlimited beginnings. Every day we begin a new day. Every time, there's the partial creations and the partial destructions that take place, the different manvantars. Sorry, Andre, I'm not trying to make your brain hurt. Just really like the paradoxes, and that all of them make sense with Krishna. That paradoxes can really only make sense with Krishna, because Krishna, he's tricky, he's a tricky little guy, which one of his all attractive features, he's the supreme trickster. And so he makes it very difficult for mental speculators to understand him, and yet all of it is very clearly understood when one simply takes shelter of these self-realized souls who can explain it to you. So, sorry, what was I saying? How Krishna's the beginning of everything, and yet there is no beginning, because Krishna is that origin. And Krishna is the origin of everything. And so, like I was saying, there's so many beginnings. There's new beginnings of new universes, and there's the partial creations, the partial devastations that take place, and then there's also the Maha devastations and that take place when Mahavishnu simply inhales. One time, many years ago, somebody was asking me, he didn't know much about our philosophy. He was just coming to Krishna lunch when I was living in Gainesville, Florida. And we were just, I like to chat with all the people that come to take prasadam, because they're actually really special souls if someone regularly comes and takes prasadam. And he was asking me one day, what's your creation theory? And I was thinking, how should I answer this question? Because, so I actually didn't go into the whole, Krishna expands into Balaram, and then Balaram expands into the Chatur Vyuha, and then from the Chatur Vyuha expands into, Anyway, so I didn't go into all of that. How Mahavishnu exhales. Although why not? But at the time, Krishna in my heart inspired me to give the answer of how we came to this material world, because of our desires to enjoy, and then it's Krishna's reciprocating with that desire. He creates this material world for us to look for, that whole story, because the people can relate to that a little bit more than some and all of it's true, but sometimes we also have to choose our words, according to what someone may be ready to hear. Although I find it so far out, as they would say, because Krishna is the most far out, and he's also the most near. Another beautiful paradox, that he's there within our hearts. No one is closer to us than Krishna, and yet he is far, far away in the spiritual world, relishing eternal rasas with his eternal associates. And how Krishna, our creation story, which is a true story, by the way, is actually it's so cool that it shows how effortlessly, not even Krishna doesn't even personally bother to create these material worlds. He sends an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of an expansion to go ahead and do it for him. And anyways, so it's emphasized here in this verse, though, that when it says Krishna is the beginning, it's talking about him being that origin, that the cause of all causes, sarva karana karanam. And how he creates this material world really as a reciprocation with our desires. And so in order to fulfill our desires, as I mentioned, he has to create these three modes of material nature. We cannot really, we can't come to this material world in our attempts to enjoy separately from Krishna if we're not put under illusion. And so as we experience, unless you're on the transcendental platform 24 hours a day, in which case you don't experience, although you might observe, the three modes of material nature are pushing and shoving everyone around, including ourselves as we try to practice sadhana bhakti. And so this emphasis on Krishna being the origin of all of that in reciprocation with our desires is very significant. Prabhupada, just following suit, Prabhupada was quoting so many beautiful verses from the Brahma Samhita that emphasize Krishna as the Supreme Personality of God. The Brahma Samhita is so beautiful because it has that perfect balance of explaining how Krishna is the Supreme in so many ways, and yet he has his beautiful, sweet pastimes in Vrindavan, playing his flute in his threefold bending form. So one of the verses that I was surprised Prabhupada actually didn't quote from the Brahma Samhita is the very first verse in the 5th chapter. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachirananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam, because this verse specifically is talking about how Krishna is that original source, that beginning. He is Ishvara Parama Krishna. So it's saying specifically, it starts out by saying Krishna is the supreme Ishvara. Ishvara meaning controller. That in one sense, we're all little mini Ishvaras with a lowercase I, trying to control and exploit this material nature. But Krishna is the supreme Ishvara, Ishvara Parama. And so it starts by stating that fact, that he is that supreme Ishvara. And that he is Satchidananda Vigraha. This is something Prabhupada also mentioned so much in this purport, the emphasis that Krishna's form is transcendental, is Satchidananda Vigraha, Vigraha means form, and Satchidananda, I'm assuming most of you know, means he's eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And that this, Prabhupada was talking about the mudhas, the rascals, that would consider Krishna's form to be material, which can be confusing for a lot of people that first hear about this concept of God being a person, God having a form, because of course they're trying to understand God in relation to because they're trying to anthropomorphize God, trying to understand that seeing God through their own vision and their own understanding of what a person is, their very limited understanding of a person having a form, and their only understanding of a person that has a form is that has a material form. But Krishna's pure spiritual form has is not limited like ours, and it's eternal. It doesn't degrade. It doesn't get old, and it's his form can do so many things that ours cannot. For example, it can expand into so many other forms that can create universes. And his form is eternal, is eternally beautiful. It never smells bad. It always smells super fragrant. He doesn't need to wear perfumes or flowers, actually, although he does, just to please his devotees in the forms of flowers. But he always smells eternally fragrant, and he is in eternal youth. And from his form, all of creation is, both the spiritual and the material worlds are just coming from his, as expanding from him, actually. Expanding from Balaram. Expanding. And then, so it's important. This verse of the Brahma Samhita actually encompasses so much of the foundation of our philosophy, of how to begin, just to begin to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his personal feature. And then it says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda. So this is so special that another paradox for the day is Anadir Adir, that Anadir means without beginning, and Adir means beginning. So it's saying Govinda is without beginning, and yet he is the beginning, like we discussed in the beginning of this class. And so he's that supreme beginning, but he himself has no beginning. That's what it's saying. And then he is Sarva Karana Karanam. He is the cause of all causes. Meaning that Lord Brahma and all the other progenitors that Krishna sends to populate the earth, they're all actually subordinate to him. So yeah, we don't always tell people, you know, that, well, our origin story is that Mahavishnu laid down in an ocean made out of milk, and then a lotus flower grew out of his belly button. And then from that belly button, you know, isn't it wonderful that the creator comes out of God's belly button? You know? And what could be more perfect, actually, in terms of the understanding of how this material world is created than such a beautiful description. It's almost wrong to say that it's our story, because its story alludes sometimes to something that is made up. So it's almost better, I think, actually, to say that this is a beautiful description of how this universe is created. And so, and then I want to go back also to the paradox at the end of this verse of how sorry, let's read it again. It says, after the creation of this world of three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, you appear to have entered it, although in fact you have not. So again, that seems like a contradiction, but because of the beautiful descriptions and explanations of our previous acharyas shining light on the Shastra, it's actually quite easy to understand that in one sense, Krishna comes to this material world. It appears that he's entered it, but once in the sense that he hasn't actually entered it, in the sense that the material energy never affects him. That he explains very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita that he's the source of all the material energy, and yet the material energy has absolutely no power over him, because he is the source of that power. He never comes under the control of the three modes of material nature, like we do. And so he does appear in this world, but he doesn't appear in this world in the way that we do, in the sense that we identify with this world. We become influenced by the things of this world. We become influenced especially by the three modes of material nature in this world. And Krishna always remains aloof from all of that. And yet out of his kindness, he descends to this world. And it's so interesting that Vasudev understands that and very clearly expresses that he is aware of Krishna's position, of his son's position, as being that supreme source, that supreme beginning that appears in this world, and that yet has nothing to do with this world. And so then the question is, what do we do with this knowledge? Like, so understanding that Krishna is the supreme source of everything, that Krishna is the cause of all causes, and that Krishna appears and yet doesn't appear. This knowledge, in many ways, it helps us, like, because one person, one might think, oh, okay, you know, Krishna's sarva karana karanam, he's the source of all. Therefore, we should give thanks and enjoy. We should just say, dear God, thanks for all of the things you give us in the forms of the different combinations of three modes of material nature. We really appreciate all the sense gratification that you're providing for us. Now we will enjoy and exploit the resources of this material nature. So some people come to that conclusion in various religious traditions, although all of the religious traditions do talk about loving God and serving God and pleasing God. Still, some people will come to this conclusion without being educated and being without having, because they have too much of that, you know, exploitative mentality, And because they also may not have had the opportunity to come in touch with more advanced devotees that will encourage them not to just try to say, oh, okay, Krishna is the cause of all causes, God's the source of creation, and then draw the conclusion that therefore he must have created it for my pleasure. But Krishna clearly explains in the Gita. Other texts, other religious texts may not be as explicit in explaining directly what we should do with this knowledge. But Krishna says what his pure devotees do with this knowledge. In chapter 10 of the Gita, he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddhabhava samanvitaha. He explains that that the wise who understand this fact, that he is the source of all of material creation, engage in his devotional service and worship him with all of their hearts. And so when one comes to understand, oh wow, Krishna, not just that this vague concept of God, but Krishna, this beautiful cowherd boy who charmingly interacts with so many different types of devotees, so many varieties of personalities, and has a very special, intimate relationship with each of them simultaneously, and in his unlimited capacity to reciprocate with so many living entities, which is hard, which is again something that one cannot wrap their material mind around. How, because when we think in our limited sense of how someone can, we can only interact with so many people, but Krishna is unlimited in his ability to interact. Right? I love the pastime of Krishna sitting with the gopas in Vrindavan, eating their lunches. Some of them are eating their lunches on rocks. Some of them are eating their lunches on leaves. Some of them are eating their lunches on flowers. And they're all sitting around in a circle around Krishna, eating all of the foods prepared by their mothers, by Krishna's eating food prepared by Srimati Radharani and Mother Yashoda. And prepared using all of the vegetables grown out of the fully conscious living entities in Vrindavan that are in the forms of vegetables, thinking that they grow, thinking, when will someone come and cook me as an offering for Krishna? The cows are working so hard to produce so much milk, the best milk, so that it can be offered and transformed into all different varieties of cheeses and milk sweets and yogurts and different preparations to be offered to Krishna. And they're all thinking, everyone's thinking, from the yogurt to the vegetables to the cowherd boys are all thinking, when will Krishna enjoy me? Instead of thinking, how can I enjoy Krishna's material creation? They're thinking, when will Krishna come and enjoy me? I exist only for Krishna's pleasure, for Krishna's enjoyment. And then Krishna's sitting down with the cowherd boys in Vrindavan, in that sacred dust that we all long for so much, especially after such a long pandemic, after it being so long since we've been to Vraj. Well, they're all sitting in that sacred dust on Govardhan Hill. They're sitting in so many circles around Krishna. And unlimited cowherd boys. You say millions, you could say billions, you could say trillions, but the number of living entities in the spiritual world is, roughly 3 times as many that come to this material world. And when you read the descriptions of how many universes come out of the pores of Mahavishnu's body, I mean, it's just, and then how many living entities are in the spiritual world, we can't count. I don't think there's number in the in any human language that can describe how many cowherd boys are sitting around Krishna. And yet each one of those cowherd boys is looking at Krishna, eating their lunch, watching Krishna eat his lunch, and thinking, wow, Krishna's just looking right at me. Even the cowherd boys that are sitting behind Krishna, they're saying, oh, Krishna's staring right at me. And that is just a small potency of how Krishna's unlimited abilities and his unlimited form, his one form of Krishna. He doesn't have to expand himself. He does expand himself also, his form, when he dances with the gopis, when he goes and meets his wives in Dwarka. He does, but he doesn't have to expand his form actually to reciprocate with every living entity in these inconceivable ways. And so, so when one understands that Krishna is the cause of all causes, what do the devotees do with this knowledge? They worship Krishna with all of their hearts. They engage in Krishna's service. They think, how can I be enjoyed by Krishna? How can I serve Krishna? What a wonderful person that that I said it, aren't you? Adipurusha Prabhu, I hope you're listening. I hope you're proud of me, because I just said how wonderful is Krishna. There, class is over, dismissed, finished. We completed the most important part of any Srimad Bhagavatam class, of how wonderful is Krishna and how can I be enjoyed by Krishna. And so yeah, I think maybe we'll end there. I had some other notes, but my brain's a little bit sluggish today from lack of the opulence of sleep. And so good thing Mahavishnu, he does a good job of sleeping. Again, and that's another thing, is while everyone else is working so hard to create and maintain themselves, even though Krishna's the creator, Krishna's our maintainer. And he creates all the universes while he's sleeping. So, and yeah, so I think we'll end there. And if there's any questions, comments, or corrections, or wonderful additions, that would be fantastic. So please enlighten us. Adipurusha Prabhu, we have nothing to say because I already said how wonderful Krishna is.
That's all. We glorify Krishna. I can't speak because we have the Akash Bunny.
Oh, okay.
There's nobody here to adjust it.
Oh, okay. Jai Radha Murlidhar. Jai Gaurachandra. Does anyone else have anything that, because I was told to end early. I can always go on and tell some pastimes about Krishna and Vrindavan because that's fun, but I hadn't prepared that much for this class.
Hare Krishna, Tulsi Rani
Hi,
Devi.
Paul. Hi, Krishna Andrea.
I just wanted to give my appreciation.
When there's a vegetable resident of the spiritual world, when they cut him up to offer to Krishna, does he scream? Does he resist? Or he just joyfully jumps into the pot? What's the consciousness?
I would think that because everyone wants to be offered to Krishna in the spiritual world, that they wouldn't, but, and that they would be like, you know, over the moon to be able to offer to Krishna.
Next
But,
stop, East 14th Street and First Avenue. Transfers available to the
sounds like you're on the way somewhere in the subway. But I don't feel like I can really comfortably answer that question with a full authoritative answer, because I'll have to let you know when I get there. Like,
That's okay with me.
I'll have to let you know. I'll have to ask the vegetables.
Maybe I'll be the vegetable that you will be offering to Krishna when you get there. Hopefully.
Maybe I will be a speck of dust stuck to your vegetable. But I wouldn't think anyone would ever protest being offered to Krishna, because that goes against the Shastra doesn't explain whether or not the vegetables are protesting when or screaming when they get chopped up. So, but the Shastra does explain that one doesn't go to the spiritual world unless they're free from all, material desires, and that they're completely, purified and have no desire but to love and serve Krishna. And therefore, it doesn't make any sense to me that they would ever complain about being offered to Krishna. In fact, we hear the Shastra does explain
Stop.
that
East 14th Street and 2nd Avenue. Transfers available.
I'm just going to
115.
you mute yourself. Yeah, thanks. But the Shastra does explain that the milk, when Mother Yashoda is boiling the milk for Krishna, and then Krishna starts crying in separation from Mother Yashoda because she put him down to go attend to the milk, and then she runs back to Krishna when he starts crying, that the milk starts to protest, not necessarily protest, but the milk feels bad, thinking, because everything in the spiritual world is fully conscious, so the milk feels bad, thinking, oh, Krishna is now drinking Mother Yashoda's milk. What use is there for me? The milk that's being boiled on the stove. The milk is thinking, compared to the love of Mother Yashoda, because Krishna doesn't need milk. He's Sarvakara Nakarna. He doesn't need anything to sustain him. He's sustaining everything else. But he just wants the love. And so love comes in the form of milk in the spiritual world. Love comes in many, many forms, unlimited forms in the spiritual world. And so the milk boiling over on the stove is actually boiling over because it's thinking, oh, woe is me. Krishna, what use is there for my existence? Krishna's enjoying Mother Yashoda's milk, and she has so much more love than me. And it not that the milk was thinking out of envy of Mother Yashoda. It was thinking, wow, no, Mother Yashoda is such an exalted, advanced devotee. Why would Krishna want to enjoy my milk? So then it boils over. And that's an explanation that's given as to why the milk boils over.
This is just beautiful, Tulsi Rani. Beautiful explanation of the way how spiritual world thinking goes. Yeah, the milk is probably the closest form to a vegetable, so that counts. Thank you very much. Beautiful answer, Tulsi Rani.
Yeah.
And one reflection. I was listening to a recollection by what's this? Mukunda Goswami, one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples. And he was saying that before Srila Prabhupada made any new ticket. Okay, I need to show them the ticket. Oh, I have to tune out. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hare Krishna. All glories to Krishna's vegetables. Angel, you have something to share?
Well, first I had a question. What is this plant behind you?
Oh, which one? I have lots of plants behind me.
Well,
but
there's one that has very big leaves, it seems like, right by your head.
yeah, that's a fiddle leaf fig. Doesn't actually
Oh.
produce figs, but yeah.
Well, I wish to thank both of you for class this morning. You
Oh, you're
are
welcome.
wonderful to look to and to listen to. You have a very sweet songbird voice.
Yeah.
So I've been taught to sit with the plants and to work with them. I'm an herbalist by trade. And so when you talk about this milk having feelings, the plants very much have these same feelings. And you can sit there if you want and water one plant and not water the other and see and feel how they feel. And so when these plants are asked to jump into the pot, they're like us when it is that we have our spiritual difficulties. We want to be there for Krishna. We want to do all of these things, but it's not always the easiest to do. When we do book distribution, for instance, someone may say something nasty to us. And so we just need to hold them and remember there's this greater good, like for the vegetables, they'll be made into Krishna's foodstuffs. And for us, we have bigger plans in life than just jumping into a soup pot recklessly.
Interesting. Very interesting comment. Yeah. Yeah. And the of course, in the material world, the plants also have some consciousness. They don't have as much consciousness as human beings, although they have a lot more consciousness than we give them credit for sure. I used to worship the plants and the trees before I realized that Krishna was the supreme source of them. So I can relate to your appreciation for Krishna's creation in the form of his plants. But yeah, book distribution's a thing. And in the material world, people are nasty. That's just the nature of this material world. So in one sense, you should just expect it. It should be a pleasant surprise if there's people actually that are not so envious and that are kind in this material world. Sometimes we expect, because it's the nature of the soul to want to have selfless, loving interactions with others. So we become disappointed when people are nasty to us. But when you study the Shastra, you come to understand that that is the nature of this material world. And so don't be surprised by it. In fact, Prabhupada would say, like, don't be surprised by who leaves the practice of Krishna consciousness. He would say, be surprised by who stays. Because it's you know, the nature of this material world is the three modes are very strong. Our false egos are very strong, and people are nasty, externally speaking, when they come under the control of the three modes of material nature. But we understand at the same time that inherently, actually, everyone is good. Everyone is an eternal servant of Krishna, and everyone actually has a desire to serve Krishna, even if they don't know it. So it is a very difficult job that we have to try to encourage people to go towards the light of Krishna consciousness. So thank you. Bhima Prabhu, I think you have something to share. No? Okay, I saw a hand, but that's okay. We also have a beautiful Tulsi plant in the back. So if you like plants, you can't see her, she's in the corner, but if you like plants, you should certainly get a Tulsi plant and worship her with all. Bhima Prabhu, please enlighten us. Yes.
Haribol, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very quickly. You mentioned that, first of all, we have devotees who are externally and internally devotees. Their heart is devoted. They're at least aiming for Krishna consciousness. They might have some affection for the devotees, which of course is an affection for Krishna. Now, we know this to be true, and we know pure devotees such as Prabhupada and pure devotees within the movement who are pure in their sincerity. Wouldn't that also logically conclude that there are also people who are adamantly against the idea of God, who are adamantly, intrinsically, not maybe they are as jiva souls buried deep, children of Krishna, but their heart is directed eternally, nityabhata, eternally against Krishna. So they are constantly demoniac forever and ever, amen. But currently, are there not demons that are just about denying the existence and causing troubles in this world and to the devotees, as there are devotees?
Well, that gets into, the complicated, discussion of like the origin of the jiva, actually, to answer that question. But I'm not gonna go there.
Well, I didn't mean, Mataji, I did not mean that.
Yeah.
To take it. I'm talking about people with ill intent, the people who are in this lifetime, no matter how much you say, oh yes, you're a child of God, they will not care, and they will do everything in their power to make life miserable for devotees and make life miserable for other living entities. Prabhupada even mentions it, Krishna even mentions it in the Bhagavad Gita, that these people are out to destroy the world.
Yeah, and he also mentions clearly in the Bhagavad Gita, I can't remember the verse, but he says not to preach to such people. So we shouldn't waste our time with such people, although they are, everyone we understand has an eternal relationship with Krishna, and but they may be also nityabhatas. They may be conditioned from time immemorial. But and so Krishna clearly says in the Gita that, if not to waste time trying to preach to such people. He actually says that not to do that. So that's why it's encouraged that we try to share Krishna consciousness with those who are innocent. Of course, the Shastra likes to explain things in very black and white terms, that it's like, oh, you're either a demon or you're a devotee. But it's explained in Kali Yuga that everyone's a mix of all those things. So,
well,
yeah.
I hear the conch shell, so it looks like that's the end of that question.
Yeah.
But as in the conch shell that blew on the battlefield, there are two sides, and they're both facing each other. And Prabhupada said we have to develop science of Krishna consciousness and also an understanding of the nescience of what the demons are up to. And I think that we should have compassion upon all, but at the same time, we should be well aware of what's going on in the background. As we are becoming awakened, there are others that wish to put others to sleep, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say in that matter.
Yeah.
Wonderful class.
Thank you. That's a nice comment. But if we are only absorbed in thinking of the nescience, then we will just stay absorbed in the nescience. So to become Krishna conscious means to be aware of this material world and its three modes and the things happening, but to really focus our attention on Krishna. So thank you for your comment. And I'm going to end here because Radha Muralidhar are giving darshan.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Beautiful class, beautiful explanation. I just wanted to share quickly that verse, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Raja Govinda Sarva Karna Karna, that Krishna is the cause of all causes, was the very first verse that Srila Prabhupada was teaching before he made even one devotee in America. When he first came, he was teaching in Sanskrit class, and that was the verse from Brahma Samhita that is an example. So Raj has a beautiful podcast, I think it's called Out of This World Studios, where he shares nectar from Srila Prabhupada pre-26 second heaven, the stories that Raj heard. This was the very first one that Srila Prabhupada presented to his Western audience. So thank you very much. Just wanted to quickly add that to the beautiful class that you gave. Thank you very much, Tulsi Rani.
Thank you. Okay. Hare Krishna. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna,
thank you.
everyone. Granta Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Tulsi Rani Devi Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna.